Where are we coming from in social security? My talk is based on research I did for a civilized community, history of social security over 100 years. And today I'm trying to try and skid through 100 years of that story and point just to major trends, and then your questions can perhaps follow what you're most interested in. I think we want to acknowledge to start with that we live in an era where we're thinking about a crisis in welfare, but we also need to realise, and I don't know whether it's comforting or dismaying to realise, there's always been a crisis in social security. Most of the issues are not new. The problems have been persistent. We have occasionally celebrated the growth of social security. So I'd like to perhaps warn you of my stance from the beginning that crisis is kind of endemic and fears to social security. Nothing is new. First, what happened before welfare? Begging. Here's Louis Lusich in the background, he with the beard. West Coast miner caught in a dynamite explosion in the mines of the West Coast in Coomera. 1884, lost his sight, lost the use of his arm. Now we talk about what can communities do today. Mining communities very supportive, but no structure there for income support, so his sons are begging for him, the only choice they have. And they say their deserving case, very important that people in need were seen to be deserving, the smallest donation will be gratefully received. So often we have to remember when we bemoan the welfare state or what welfare is growing, without welfare we'd have begging. And we do have some begging today. We have begging in my local shops, despite the welfare system. First benefits social security in New Zealand, with the old age pension, 1898. First time it was acknowledged that people could not earn a steady income for itself, and this needed to be alleviated with a regular system. It wasn't a natural development for a new world colonial society, and America did not go that way to provide a pension for all until the 1930s. 1930, yeah. And opponents feared the old age pension. I mean, it seems so respectable today. They thought it would encourage malingerers and deadbeats. And we have to acknowledge that qualms always go alongside the generosity or beneficence or whatever level we give of social security. But in the 1880s, you have depression, the economy was precarious, the global markets were uncertain, there were bank crises, people could not keep up their insurance payments, their friendly society payments, if they were working people. And throughout the Western world, we're not acting alone. Denmark, Germany, England, Australia, systems were being set up, first of all, for the old, acknowledging that a working life is unstable in many parts of the world, and acknowledging too that poverty is not necessarily a matter of individual blame. It was a pragmatic solution for a small growth in the number of old people, but also a philosophic idea behind it, a recognition that an individual is not necessarily to blame for her poverty or his poverty, that fortune is so capricious, were the sort of key words in the parliamentary debates, I think. Fortune is a hazard. You know, we do not have complete control over our destiny. And this pension for old people, these are old people collecting their pension here, got away from it got away from charity, it got away from the haphazard, personal discretionary judgments of charitable aid that existed at the time. It recognised that poor people can be people like us, and one day we might be in that condition. It was small, it had its faults, but it set a precedent, a very important precedent for all the benefits that followed, partly because it was national, but mostly because it was regular and it was definite. It didn't depend on the interview, the prejudices or the sympathy of the person who interviewed you. It's stated in law that under certain criteria you receive a certain set regular amount of income support from the state. And it was that regularity and that clarity stated in law that was important. Also very significant that we took a different route from Denmark and England and other countries and decided not to go the way of a social insurance system. Our system based on general taxation, partly because we knew in a young colonial society that people couldn't pay their dues, that an insurance system wouldn't work for everyone. Also extraordinary that we led the way, first old age pension in the world also was equal payments for men and women, which is extraordinary and which a social insurance system really, very rarely does, and also equal payments for Maori and Pākehā in the law. And this drawing here, taken in, I think, done in 1901, reflects New Zealand's pride in this new pension. Here are men and women receiving the pension. They're respectable, they're contented. It's a good thing. However, any pension excludes some people. Looking at a benefit system is a good way of looking at who do we not honour or recognise in our society. In early New Zealand, that meant Chinese, Asian, Indian people, non-British, and particularly assessed on racial lines. Does the Fijian person have 1/5 of this blood and 5/5 of this, etc.? Very racially oriented. Because the Chinese were despised within New Zealand, they were not eligible for the pension. Here is a man who would qualify in other ways. He is hardworking, he's respectable, he's old, but he's Chinese, and that disbarred him until 1936. Also Lebanese families, the Corbins, famous wine family, did a lot of arguing over 3 decades that they should be included in the pension system. And it's interesting that Maori were very quickly, although in the law they were equal, they were very quickly demoted within the pension system, not at the national level and the law, but at the local level. And there I'm really wary of systems that are too discretionary. We have a love today of discussing doing things at the local level, doing things personally. An informal, impersonal, centre-based system can be much fairer. You get in local Maori areas storekeepers, people dispensing, supervising the pension, much more judgmental attitudes to how Maori spend the pension, different ideas about it. They're so poor they don't need it, they're used to being poor, or else they're so rich they give it away to the rest of the community so they don't need it. Either way, Maori don't need the pension, and in 1926 that was institutionalised in the law at a different rate for Maori, a lower rate than for Europeans. So often boundaries about our feelings, who do we accept and not accept, traditionally within our community can be reflected in the pension system. And although we were first in the world and leaders at introducing the old age pension, government became very resistant in the following 4 decades to embracing anyone else or including them within the welfare system. Here we have a family. What do we do if this father is out of work, if he's ill, if he leaves his family? And none of those cases, the male is the key to the workplace and to keeping a family together. In any of these cases, there's no support whatever for this family for 40 years because of the fear that costs can escalate. Widows were the first to be recognised, very respectable group after old age pensions. But also the fear there is no logical stopping place at pensions. Once you think that poverty is any reason can contribute to the need for support, where do you stop? That fear of boundaries expanding forever. So this is going back right to 1911, this fear of costs growing.